Welcome to Sounds Like Portraits. I'm Philippe Ungar. This is a conversation on creativity. Today, nearly two-thirds of American households have members who play video games on a regular basis. It's a $100 billion global industry. For this episode, I met Frédéric, chairman and CEO of the ATARI group. He told me that when Nolan Bushnell created ATARI in 1972, he asked his teams to create a game that any drunk guy in any bar can play at any time. Pong was invented, and with many other successful games, the brand became iconic for a whole generation of gamers. In 2013, Frédéric took over the company, which was then in bankruptcy. The brand had almost lost its identity. Now, it's profitable because of the success of its roller coaster tycoon game with more than 200,000 players every day. And creativity is at the core of this revival. But what about the gaming experience? Is there any creativity for gamers? It's time to listen to him. But before, he told me what he tried to do all his life.
All my life, I've always tried to take my chances. And basically what I've always tried to do was to keep moving and to keep learning, because what's really important today is the pace of evolution and the pace of innovation. So I think the thread, back to your question, the thread is really for me just to try to stay abreast of what is going on and try to adapt. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
What led you to the video game industry?
First of all, I like video games. You know, we are a generation that basically was born with video games. I think we are the first generation. So for us, it was brand new. And I think, this is the key reason for me.
If we look back in time, what did ATARI represent since its creation in 1972?
This is a question I always ask myself, and I always review, because we're trying to relaunch the brand. I think the brand is basically at a crossroad of entertainment, technology, and revolution. This was true in 1972, and I think it's still true today.
Can you describe what a kid of the 70s could do with an Atari 2600?
Oh yeah, that was the first time, for people who don't know what Atari is, and the first game was Pong. Pong was a tennis game, and there are many stories around Pong. I can just give you two. One is Nolan Bushnell, who created Atari, basically went to the team of designers and he said, just create a game and any drunk guy in any bar can play at any time. So that was Pong. And then the second thing is that they started to sell machines, and they installed some machines in California. And after like 1 or 2 days, the owner of the first machine calls back and says, look, that thing is broken, it's not working, take it back. So they go there, it was a bar, and in fact they realized that people had played so much with the machine that they had jammed the money system, and in fact there were too many coins in the machine. This is why the machine would not work. It's a very nice story, and it's true.
It's a good beginning.
It tells a lot about things to come.
About the things that came, creativity is really a key word for the video game industry. Can you tell me why?
Why is it important? Because, especially today, the barrier to entry is very low. You can do a game for $50,000, and you have a lot of people trying to do that. If you have the creativity, it gives you the chance to basically, start from zero and then do something, right? So this is why creativity is very important. Otherwise, a lot of things have been done in games. Why would you buy, that game if that game would not bring you something extra, right? So it's very, very important in our industry. And creativity is not only, the tech, it could be also the story, it could be the type of characters, it could be the gameplay. If you look at Fortnite, the great thing about Fortnite and the creativity inside Fortnite is they found a kind of balance, a blend of features which basically make the game unique.
When you decided to take over ATARI in 2013, what were the most challenging aspects for you of leading a famous brand that had lost its identity?
I had been with Atari from 2001 to 2007. So the original team, so we all left in 2007. I stayed in the US and I kept, doing what I knew how to do, which was to finance, create some products. And so they called me, they being the new team, called me back early 2013, and they had done everything wrong. The company was in bankruptcy, 1 million euros of revenue. Sorry, these are just numbers, but that's the reality. The point was not really to reinvent, but the brand had lost its identity. It was just that the industry has changed so much that, again, we had to create a new way of working, a new organization. And then also we had to select, it's easy to say, okay, let's relaunch it, but how do you relaunch it? Where do you start, right? So we had 3 years which were very, very difficult in a sense, combining administrative issues, financial issues, and, deciding what to do next. We've made some mistakes, and at the same time, we've created great things. So it's a blend.
One of your best-selling game is Roller Coaster Tycoon Touch. What kind of experience does it offer to the users?
So with Roller Coaster Tycoon Touch, which is a mobile game, what you do, you create an amusement park on your phone, and depending on how you build your park, depending on where you place the restaurants, the type of attractions, depending on basically how you create your park, we have a system which basically is going to incentivize or is going to influence the way your visitors are going to interact and spend money in your park. So are they going to be happy? Are they going to be unhappy? What will be their level of satisfaction? But you can go very deep. Like you can decide to have a lot of high thrill roller coasters. You can decide to put many restaurants, less restaurants. So with all of that, it's a giant formula. But based on that, it dictates basically how many people will come into your park. What's interesting about the game is that first it's creation. So you can just play the game for the beauty of creating an amusement park, your own Disneyland if you want. And you can also decide to play the game as a tycoon and say, you know what, no, I want to do the game. I want to create a nice park, but I'm also interested to make sure that my virtual visitors are happy. And money can come, later in the games. But you have many, many facets in the game, so this is why people like it. We have roughly 200,000 people playing every day today.
What is the difference between the very first experience in 1972?
What's interesting is that in 1972 you had an experience which was very short, a gameplay which would basically last 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes at max. And it would be in front of your TV, right? Today we have something which is much more mobile. The time for each session, the length of each session depends on the game, but you can play for 3 minutes and have something very, rewarding. Like if you play Candy Crush, you can play still, the old console games, and you can have sessions for 2-3 hours. Today, the experience is very, very diverse, and you can decide to play and have fun for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, depending on the type of game you like. So I think that's the beauty. And of course, the big difference today is multiplayer.
All over the world.
All over the world, and regardless of the language you're speaking, you don't need to talk.
There's creativity in creating such a games. Is there creativity for you in playing?
It's possible because I remember before coming back to Atari, we created a zombie game, which was a survival game, and we basically put all the tools in the game. It was, an area of 10 square kilometers. People would find tools and way to do things in the game, and by combining a tool, something here, something there, they basically created things that we had not even thought about. So how to survive, they were teaming up to protect certain areas, we were just really putting resources together. So yes, you can even find new or create new ways to play, even things that you can go beyond, what we are offering you.
You're looking for a global audience, and I'm wondering how it's possible to make a video game for a global audience beyond the cultural differences.
No, it's not possible. Think Hollywood. You have Hollywood, you have Bollywood, you have the Chinese market, you have the Japanese market. So it's very rare for a movie to be successful worldwide. We are the same. We have our games. If you do a game for the US, it will work in Europe, potentially Russia, Turkey, but then it will not work in India. It will not work in China, because in any case you have to go through a Chinese publisher who is going to rework on your game. It might work in Korea, so for the very first time we've decided to take care of Korea ourselves for RCT Touch. So we have basically added Korean as a language in the game, and we have a team in Seoul who is monitoring the game, making sure that social media are monitored. We answer every question. So that's the very first try for us, and it's working very well for the moment, because amusement parks are kind of universal. But we failed in Japan. I know why, because Japanese players are expecting a very different type of games with a very different pace, with very different gaming mechanics. So
could you be more specific about that?
Yeah, they like card trading, they like collection, they like fast gameplay, and this is not the case of Roller Coaster Tycoon Touch. So yeah, you can see the cultural differences.
How do you communicate within the ATARI community all over the world?
So what we do, we have, of course, a website. We try to create pages on, is it Facebook from time to time, Instagram, but we try to create pages that are in local languages, depending on the game.
My question was more about, how do you listen to you gamers?
We don't communicate one-on-one. It's impossible, first. Second, it's forbidden because we are a listed company. So there's no way we can have a one-on-one conversation with someone, even if it's difficult for them to understand it. We don't fall into the trap, because if I start giving information, not even financial, but if I start to give information about the performance of a game to someone, I ran a full of regulations. So the only thing we do, and we do well, is when there's an issue, when there's a question about a game, there's a procedure. It's contact us or call support, and then we answer the question. So that's very dry, but that's the only way to do it.
How artificial intelligence is transforming the industry today?
I think it's not really transforming the industry. I think it's part of the industry. I think this is the backbone of the industry. So it's part of a creation, and it's part of the creative process. Artificial intelligence is usually, associated with processes, industrial processes, robots, and all of that. We don't do that. What we do, we create a software that is going to simulate a situation, an event, and depending on how you act, the event or the environment will react. And then will force you to react again. So this is why it's interactive. So we don't need robots. The only way, robots can help us is to assemble, activate or deactivate servers, to basically, when you have an influx of 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 people, a peak of players during a certain, rush hour, artificial intelligence is helping us to set up the servers. That's it. But the rest, it's all about entertainment, action, reaction. This is what the games are about.
What do you need to create a new game?
Well, first an idea. Second, making sure that the game, that game has not been made. At least there's always a game, a racing game. You have tons. So there's always a racing game. There's always a shooter. But I think what you really need to have is the one thing that people will come for. And for instance, if you take Fortnite, they come for a very, very specific last man standing gameplay. And I have had games with last man standing back in the day, so last man standing, for everyone to understand, it's you put 40 people onto a map, or 100 people, they fight, and there's only one winner at the end. This is a Hunger Games, right? Last man standing is not new. It's just the way they did it. They added a few things that everyone liked. And also, it's like fashion. Today, fashion is about denim blue, and tomorrow is going to be pink leather. Okay, so right now there's a fashion about last man standing modes. It's going to disappear in 10, 12 years. 5 years ago, what we call match 3 games, so basically Candy Crush, were very, very popular. Today they are less. So things change as well, it's just like fashion.
What doesn't change is that it starts with a story and a graphic design.
Not necessarily a story, because you have games where there's no story. Candy Crush, there's no story. So it starts with an experience which basically is providing you fun, or at least something that you're looking for. It could be stress, it could be fun, it could be joy, it could be like fear, but it's something you're looking for which is temporary, right? So it's a virtual experience because you're not going to die. Nothing's going to happen to you. So it's a way to have a virtual experience of a certain kind, and you select it. I want to go for fun. I want to go for a 2-minute experience. I want to go for fear. I want to go for a shooting experience. I want to go for an adrenaline experience doing a racing game. Well, I want to go just for fun with friends, so I go and I play a multiplayer game.
So your job is about attracting the attention of the gamers.
It's more than that. It's really creating a community around every game, because what we've realized is that if you play a game and if you have a lot of your friends, when I say friends, not necessarily people but people the avatar, the face, the code. If you're immersed into a game, into a community, you're less likely to leave the game. So if we build this community, if we listen to it, because they're going to give us some suggestions, so if we go also their way, I think you can be very successful.
How concerned are you about the cybersecurity issues?
Yeah, it's a lot of concerns because, of course, we deal. So we try today not to deal with what we call personally identifiable data. We're very concerned about, chat rooms. If there's we try not to offer the opportunity to chat in our games because you don't know what's going to happen. So cybersecurity is also, making sure that we try to limit the interaction between the players to a certain level. But as far as, for instance, the invoicing and the credit card data are concerned, this is not a problem because the games are on Apple and Google. They do the job and they send us a check every month. That's it. So it's all about the integrity of our players, I would say.
Is there something essential you've learned since you are in the industry?
During these 20 years, the world, back to what we were saying initially, the world has changed, right? It was initially console, and now it's mobile games. It was boxes, today it's digital, so all of that. What we've learned is that basically the very interesting part of his job is to basically sit down and say, okay, what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, at least in our industry, but even, on the global level, and how can we basically anticipate on that to deliver something that people are going to have fun with. Sometimes you're good, sometimes you fail,
Do you have guidelines for your own children in terms of watching screens?
I used to have some, but at the end of the day, it's, my advice is always to try to maintain a certain balance. Same for food, same for alcohol, same for cigarettes, right? It's a question of balance. I think right now everyone is rightly concerned about players playing too much. It's a concern, of course. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal. It wasn't paid by the industry, but it was a very interesting article saying that more and more companies were hiring people on the fact that they were gamers and had done things in the video game industry because we were listing all the benefits. Again, it's a question of balance. I'm not saying you have to play, otherwise you're not going to get a job. But what's interesting is that when you play, you learn certain skills, a certain attitude. You're not used to the same hierarchy. It's more like tribes and circles, which is good and not good when you have to join a company. But in terms of guidelines, to play, or instead of guidelines not to play, for me it's a balance.
That's the last stage of the interview. I'm gonna leave the room. Please hold the microphone and add whatever you want to the interview.
Okay, so you must have heard the door closing. And I just wanted to finish this interview by thanking everyone for listening. And just wanted to say that what we're trying to do is clearly stay true to the values of the brand, which are really at the crossroad of creation, technology, and entertainment. And this is clearly the line here, and we'll try to make sure that we deliver on that front.
Thank you, Frédéric Chesnais, for sharing your story. It was Sounds Like Portraits, a podcast by Philippe Ungar. Music, Charmeuse de Serpent, composed and conducted by Olivier Glisson. See you soon for the next episode.